So this is it. This is submarines in random battles. I've been playing through these a little bit since they released on Wednesday for the North America server, and I'm recording this on Thursday. It's going up Friday. Not that you really need to know that, but just know that these are my first games. I started with the tier 6s like most people. The missions that are required to get these are just base XP missions. I did mention in the dev blog post from yesterday that it was really good that Wargaming was changing the way you get these. And I said in that post that, well, at least it looked like you were going to have some ships at those higher tiers to get access to those higher tier submarines. But it's not actually the case. Unfortunately, the way the missions are designed, you can have a tier 5, get your 12,500 base XP, play the tier 6 submarine that you receive for finishing that mission to get the base XP for the next mission that gets you the tier 8s, which then can get you the base XP for the tier 10s. So you can get tier 10s if you have a tier 5 ship, which is not amazing. Yeah, not the best foresight, I guess, by Wargaming on that one, but hey, what are you going to
So we're looking at submarines now. Submarines have been put in the game. So this is an above average player, and he's relating his submarine experience. He had another one too, which we may get to later. So any questions, let us know in chat.
do, right? Can't get everything exactly perfect given the incredibly rushed release of submarines into random battles. But here they are. You saw us just kill a DD very easily there. I've found that the submarine homing torpedoes are very, very strong against DDs. I don't think that surprises anyone. We've seen a lot of the clips of the submarine torps just just curving ridiculously, probably tighter than most ships in this game can maneuver to hit some things. It's kind of silly, but that's what they can do. So intelligent use of your damage control is going to be very much required. And even when we don't have a full lock on, sometimes the torps just hit things. So just know that you should just be launching torps all the time. Doesn't really matter. You got like a 1-minute cooldown on these ones at tier 6. Cooldown goes up a little bit, but you get more torps and they go longer ranges, and they actually do a little bit better speed as they go up. Also, the speed is greater. The listed speed in the port is based on them having a target to home in on, right? So when the ping is neutralized on this DD here, the torps slow down, and when we get another ping, they speed back up again. That's just kind of how it goes. So that DD used his damage control on that first ping, which seems a little bit rushed by his part. My thought is, since the torps get spotted around that 2.2 kilometer range, I believe, and depending on how big your ship is, that's how long they'll continue to home in for. DDs, of course, get the most amount of homing, so we actually end up hitting this guy. Battleships have the least amount of homing, so when you see the torps, I would suggest that's probably the right time to use your damage control, just because that'll give you the most amount of time to evade. And if you're a battleship, well, we'll see later on, you don't want these things double pinged on you. You do not want that at all costs. You have to save your damage con for the double ping torpedoes about to hit your side. You have to. There's nothing you can... Triple fire doesn't matter. Quad fire, 2 floods, maybe the damage is similar. But I really do think the damage output is so extreme from double ping torps on battleships that you have to save them. And in this match, unfortunately, no battleships for me to go after. I think we're going to see less of those battleship players playing if the popularity of submarines and CVs continues to go up. And here we go. The torps that are going to miss end up hitting. Poor guy. Maybe he could have dodged those if he didn't drift into them, but I mean, they were still homing in on him. They continued to curve for a very long time, even next to your ship. Getting up to tier 8 now after playing a couple games in the tier 6. Well, we're getting rushed by a DD, and theoretically this is where we're at our weakest in a submarine. But this DD is spotted the entire time he's rushing us, so our team can just focus on him while we dive and try and evade as much as possible. German subs have this amazing ability of this battery charge where it essentially gives you a free amount of time, which is around 30 seconds or so, underwater without your charge of your battery depleting. It, of course, depletes at like 3 times the rate when you're spotted, so it's really good to use this consumable when you get lit. But since this guy was lit and he was forced to smoke up and not continue pursuing us, otherwise, you know, he risks dying to my team, it gives us time to turn around and just nuke him with torps. This guy made the wrong play, unfortunately for him, but we'll show you later on an example where I die to a DD who played pretty well. The scenario was different, though, end game versus mid game type of thing, where I at least had support of my teammates. Surprising no one, the torpedoes look like they can continue through the water here, but they cannot, so something to be aware of. They haven't actually made it visible when your torpedoes are going to hit the island or not. Seems a little bit ridiculous that they can't at least show you your torpedoes are going to get hit by the island. Also, notice how I wasn't able to dive any deeper there. Just some bugs and things that show that this isn't fully baked yet. We're about maybe quarter way through the baking process of these submarines. And, well, here's a battleship with 2 pings on him. Apparently he used his damage con already. He's on multiple fires as well, which, you know, he'd die over time to my team, which, you know, fair enough. But what if we just take all his HP? Yeah, you're going to have to save your damage cons, Battleship players. You really, really do. I would suggest even taking the damage control mod in slot 1 to increase the duration of your damage control time. That way, when you click it, hopefully it lasts long enough to negate, you know, more pings coming in for longer. I don't know. It's going to be tough, honestly. It's going to be really tough. At tier 10 here now, we get, what is that, 14-kilometer range torpedoes that home in on the target. So I can just sit in this gap close to my friendly side, ping away. Ping also goes 14 kilometers, and get these homing torps curving around this corner into this Yamato here. We launched them well in advance, and the reload at tier 10 is a little bit longer, but you do get a lot of torpedoes for your trouble as well. Something to note, though, the pings actually reload slower as well, so you can't just spam out pings like you do at lower tiers. So you have to be more intentional about when you ping and actually hitting those targets. Here, unfortunately, I keep missing my double ping. It's really important to get those double pings because there's a few commander skills that give increased duration of the pings lasting on target and giving you extra damage. So not only does the double ping naturally just ignore torpedo protection and give you those citadel hits, which give you those insane devastating strikes, but a captain skill actually gives you 15% more damage when you get a double ping as well. So really, really good regardless of the ship type when you take that skill to get those 2 pings on target. So that's where the skill, I think, is going to come into play, is people who are really good at leading and getting those 2 pings. That's going to be really, really important. But you could see we just did, what, 30k damage to this Yamato without double ping and hitting his nose. So damage output's pretty okay when you can get it. We'll talk about that more at the end of this video, but I have found submarines to be extremely boring. I have had, well, I've had no damage multiple times in these ships. Literally 0. I'll sail around for 20 minutes. Well, not quite, because games don't always last that long. I'll sail around for 15 minutes and do 0. I'll sit in a cap, I'll sit close to where the enemy should be coming, and I'll miss my pings, I'll miss my torps, the torps will curve into islands because I hit the wrong target, all that stuff as we get another massive hit on this poor Yamato. He goes down, we'll skip forward a little bit more, and a curve first, who's pushing in to try and use his secondaries and his brawling ability. Well, we all know that this game is not designed to allow for brawling, so submarines, of course, fit that mold perfectly. Curve firsts are an amazing target to go for. They're so huge that it's almost impossible for these torps to miss, even with the longer duration that they're not homing in, right? I think it's about 2.1 kilometers. It's pretty impossible for these to miss a curve first. It's so big, turns so slowly, and has such a massive turning radius. Yeah, these aren't going to miss. And we have a double ping, so he's on, what, 60,000 HP? And we have 6 torpedoes in the water coming for him. Yeah, I think he had fun. And keep in mind, if you didn't see the dev blog video from yesterday, they're not happy with the damage output and battle impact of submarines. So I would expect some buffs to the damage. So get another big hit on this Yamato, unfortunately missing the double ping, but he is going down to our floods, I believe, at this point. And now here's an interesting thing. A destroyer in smoke. Well, we can just pop up right next to him, send our torps on the way, ping him. Even though we can't see him, you can still ping him, which I imagine that is a terrifying moment for a destroyer to have themselves pinged while they're unspotted in smoke. We can dip below the water, be completely safe from this aircraft carrier, even though he's spotting us. You know, this DD did disable the pings, but I don't know. He must have been forced to turn in a specific way. So we get that kill yet. 3 kills, 171k. And here's my mistake. I mess up. I get too close to the enemy here. And unfortunately, I'm going to end up dying here. But what I want you to notice is what this gearing does. He does a really, really good job here. He, I think, tries to bait me into surfacing to get these torpedoes off, and then he accelerates hard. You notice my torpedoes aren't going to arm here. I completely misplay this. He gets a good hit off on me, and, well, he's dropping depth charges at the same time. Really well played here. But you notice this is really only possible when I'm not supported by my team, right? If I had teammates around, that gearing being spotted that whole time probably dies before he even gets to me. So this really only matters late game when the submarines and the game is probably decided. So killing a sub at that point doesn't really matter all that much. These things are basically unreachable when it's mid-game or early game and there's teammates around. Destroyers will never, ever be able to kill a submarine mid-game, especially in a match like this where, well, it's so open and this middle cap is so important. So I'm just going to sit here. I know how important this cap is. I hate this map and this game mode for a various number of reasons, but one of them is because of how important it is to just sit in this middle cap as a destroyer player. But now as a submarine player, it's awesome because everybody's forced to come to you. They're forced to push in, and you can just sit here pinging away, not a care in the world, and sending out these homing torpedoes. Something you should know is when you go into periscope depth, that is just clicking the C key once, well, your detection goes down to like 2 or 2.1 on surface. So you can actually sit here, not doing anything, and if you get relatively threatened by your 5.6 kilometer detection range, you just push C once, and you have, what, 7 minutes, 50 seconds worth of sitting at that depth for free? It's kind of ridiculous. Kremlin pushes in, he gets pinged a bunch, and of course takes a bunch of damage. We flood him for a little bit. Kremlin does have those fast-acting damage controls, but they're nowhere near fast enough to keep up with our pings, right? So submarines look pretty insane given this video, I think. But keep in mind, there's a lot of downtime that I'm not showing you. I'm trying to stretch, I think, 8 or 9 games into a 15-minute video here. So keep in mind, this is nearly all the action that I saw. There's a ton of downtime, and for that reason, I do think these are pretty boring ships. They're pretty bad for the game, too, as they take away multiple surface ships. In this game, for example, it takes away 2 entire surface ships. So now we have 2 submarines, 3 destroyers, all trying to run from stealth. Cruisers oftentimes sitting behind islands trying to spam over them from stealth. And at that point, who's left to really shoot at? You know? I think we're going to see games look even emptier than they already do. Double ping here ends up killing the Kremlin. We get that extra damage, but not Citadel damage since we didn't hit the side of his ship. Could be a strategy to sit just bow in when you're getting pinged like that, but you're probably dead if you're just sitting bow in anyway. So stern in at the back of the map is probably the best way to play a battleship at this point. Now, I want you to look at this. We pinged something that's moving. We're not pinged on the Kurfürst. You see that little dot moving across the screen? That's actually the Holland. He was not spotted there. We accidentally pinged him, and his last known position is constantly updating on that mini-map. That gives my team knowledge that he's there. Our Petro probably radared for a different reason, but it actually got the Holland spotted then yet. It wasn't intentional, but that's something that can happen. You can have a last known position of a ship that's undetected as your pings keep going. I think that's a little bit odd. It gives you that little bit of extra information that you really shouldn't be having. But regardless, Kurfürst pushes in, gets double pinged. What happens? Yeah, dev strike. Don't push in, guys. If you're playing a battleship, do not push in. I think these are a bad addition to the game, but this has been just my first day. So Keep in mind, this is my 4 tier 10 games I played. That first one you saw, no damage. This second game, well, that was the 171k game where I died to that gearing player who played it pretty well. Third game, 0 damage. And fourth game, we got this one, which did 116k nuking battleships. So to me, it seems like it's just an all or nothing. You're either bored, doing nothing, essentially useless, filling a slot that you really shouldn't be filling, or you're just ruining one particular person's game, forcing them to go to port right away. Whether it's a cruiser, destroyer, battleship, doesn't matter. You get those double pings, those torps home in, there's not a lot they can do at that point. So save your damage con, guys. Any ship you're playing, if there's submarines around, just save your damage con. Eat the fire, eat the double fire, doesn't matter. Engine's knocked out, maybe just don't repair it. That's how important it is to save your damage con for when those torpedoes are about to hit you. Anyways, that's my thoughts so far after a single day of playing them. So I'm playing my Pommern, trying to get some hits missions done out of German battleships, and I run into a game with, well, a midway and multiple submarines. So I try and flank, I take my time. We're about 8 minutes into this match at this point. I do take my time sniping, and when I do try and push in, using my battleship with hydro and secondaries to support my destroyer friend, well, the submarine shows up right on my flank right as I push in. Using every available option to me, I use my hydro intelligently to see the torps, get rid of the pings, get rid of all of the homing and extra damage of the torpedoes, even dodge his torpedoes. This results in me missing his first salvo, right? But he gets to ping me right away again. And I eat a torpedo from the Changmu. I probably could get lit on fire by someone if they were fire spamming me as I push in. Double ping, can't repair, dead. Welcome to the future of World of Warships. Great job, Wargaming.
Hey, what's going on, ladies and gentlemen? No Zoop for you here, and I've got an interesting question today. One that I actually asked myself randomly playing yesterday. Why am I still playing? Or for that matter, why are you still playing? Why are any of us still playing after 5, 6 years if you've been playing from the very beginning? So as I played, I sat and I kind of pondered this. I just wondered, why am I still playing? I mean, I have no vested interest in the game. This is the longest game I've ever played. I mean, 5, 6 years. I can't say that I've played any other game out there as long. And it's not like at this point right now the game is extremely enjoyable. I mean, has it ever really been the most enjoyable game you've ever played? I don't think any of us can honestly raise our hands and say, yes, this game is without a doubt the best game that I have ever played. Which just makes it more ludicrous why I've been playing this long, or any of us have. I mean, I'm not trying to knock the game, but at its base level, it is still just an arcade game with ships that has serious mechanical problems from time to time, serious bugs from time to time, serious issues. I mean, it's not like this is Call of Duty or a AAA game that people are going to buy and they're going to absolutely love it and spend every minute playing it for 1 or 2 years until the life cycle ends, and then they move on to the next greatest thing that comes out. I mean, that's what happens with AAA games. This is a free-to-play game. So, I mean, its life cycle lasts a lot longer. It's going to be out a lot longer. And I think most free-to-play games are still very much works in progress throughout their entire life cycle, which could last up to 10 years. I mean, look at World of Tanks. It's still somewhat going strong, I guess. People are still playing it. The game's still being updated. People grumble about it. They hate certain aspects, but they still play. But when you think about all these things and just how it takes 20 minutes to play an entire round sometimes, something that doesn't take as long in any other multiplayer game. First-person shooter, a round's going to last anywhere between 5 to 10 minutes, so you can get lots of rounds in. You got respawns, everything else, something you don't have in World Warships either. You get sunk, you're out, you're gone. And for those of you that don't have premium, probably struggling to get back into the game. You can't even repair your ship or get it back in there. So, why am I still playing this? And it's not like I'm a, I guess, content creator that needs the game for survival. It don't. I mean, there's legitimately no reason why I'm still playing. Or any of us are. After everything that's happened. So, I kind of wondered about this yesterday. Just sitting around and into the night randomly, and I don't know why. I wasn't focused yesterday. I guess it was a rough weekend, drill and everything else. So I think what it came down to, the more I thought about it, the attachment that I have to this game doesn't really revolve around the gameplay. Not at all. I mean, I'm at the point right now where I don't care how I do in a round. Obviously, I want to win. Obviously, I want to hit 100,000 damage. If I don't hit 100,000 damage, I consider it a bad game for me, because that's just where I'm at with my own personal skill. That's my Mendoza line. For you out there that are familiar with the baseball term, the Mendoza line is, dealing with batting average. If you bat over a certain batting average, you're good. If you're below it, well, you're just another player that's probably going to bounce between the big leagues and the little leagues. But for me, that's my goal every time I go out and play. But at this point, I'm now at the point where if I don't hit it, I really don't care. Yes, I want to win. Yes, I want to look like I'm doing good out there, especially because so many people know me and recognize me when I go out there and play, and I feel like I have to do good, because I feel like when the team sees me, they're like, oh, we're going to win, which isn't really always the case. But I think my attachment to the game, at this point, for me at least, is to the ships. And the more and more I think about that, the more and more I think that holds true. Now, that's only two parts, because I have an attachment to you, the players. And I get a lot of joy interacting with people. I really do. That is one of the highlights for me playing this game. Just the pop culture references that fly around when I play, the witty banter with players that know me and randomly wind up in a round. It really, to me, because I've got a community, it feels like I've got a bunch of friends out there that, yeah, we might not know each other, but I pop in there, you know me, I'm friendly, I'm very approachable, I enjoy playing with you all, and I think that's what keeps me going in this game. One of the things that keeps me going. Something I don't have in any other game I play. Of course, in my other games, when I play, I've got my own dedicated squad, I've got buddies that I play Warzone with every single weekend. We know each other's abilities and, or lack thereof, but we can still go out there and win Warzone and everything else. But this is different. This is, I never know who I'm going to come across when I play. Every single round's different. I jump into the game. I meet someone new, someone interesting, communicate with them, and what was the term in Fight Club? Fly-by-night friends or whatever, or single-serving friends. You wind up next to them in an airplane, you talk to them for the duration of the flight, then you go your merry ways and you never see them again. Well, Warships is somewhat the same way. Of course, you might run into these players again in the future, You might remember them because they've got a funny name or something else. So I think that's really one of two reasons why I'm still playing this game and what keeps me in the game. It's just the players that I come across, you all, the community. Because it ain't the gameplay at this point anymore, especially with the HE spam and everything else. The second reason I'm still vested in this game and why I still play is I have a connection to these ships, and I've come to realize that. As a historian, as someone who loves naval warfare, as someone who loves World War II history, outside of visiting these ships in real life, which I've done for many of them, and this is why I'm kind of highlighting this Massachusetts round I just had. By all means, it's not a great Massachusetts round. It's just, we'll call it filler, but I hadn't played the Massachusetts in a while, and I said, all right, I'm going to take it out. And when I did, I stopped there and I'm like, I've actually been on this ship. At an event, I met players on this ship. This ship represents something to me, represents something special. It's a moment in real physical history, not only for me, but going back to World War II. And because of that, I feel I have a unique, special bond with this ship. And I enjoy playing it for that reason, and just looking at it and imagining the history that it went through and remembering me being on this ship. And the same goes for ships like the USS Iowa. I have a connection to that ship. I've been out there. I've toured it. I'm sure players are the same way with the Missouri, or the Belfast even. I've seen the Belfast, but I haven't toured it. USS Kidd. That's what keeps me in this game at this point. These ships. And the hope that more ships like that will come out, though. Slowly, we've moved on to 100% paper, it would appear. Which I feel is unfortunate, because we still have these connections to these ships. And ships that we don't have yet, that we desperately want. For historical reasons, and that connection. Ships like the USS New Jersey, or Wisconsin, which I feel are my home ships. Because if I go 4 hours in any direction, I can get to either one of them. Those are the ships I want. Or the USS Johnson, which I've been saying I want for 5 years because of what it did in World War II. It's those unique connections with the ships and the community are what keep me in this game right now. That's why I'm still playing after 5 or 6 years. Granted, it's not as much as it used to be, not nearly as much as it used to be. I don't quite have the desire to be at that level anymore. I still love making content for the game because I find it another way to interact with you all. But as far as content's concerned, my priorities have somewhat shifted, and that's because of real life stuff too. Twins, life, military job, the reserves is getting a lot more busy, being at the division level and everything else. But yeah, I mean, at this point in the life cycle of this game, I'm not playing to be competitive. I'm not complaining. I'm not playing because I absolutely love this game, the mechanics and everything else. I'm playing because of that connection with the ships, the historical aspect. I guess I fall into that category of players now that just play ships because of the history and because of you all. I'm still playing because of you all. I love playing with you guys and gals and running into you all in-game and just connecting with you all at a personal level. It kind of keeps me going in this game. And if it weren't for those two things right now, I don't think I'd be playing anymore. Because again, it's not like the gameplay has been refined to a point that I think this game is worth playing still. But it's the community, the players, the other players, that interaction with them, and the fact that we do have these historical ships in the game that I just love seeing in action, and just kind of envisioning how they were in World War II and saying, this is probably the closest thing that I've got to it's not a simulator, but the closest thing I've got, and the ships are rendered beautifully, they really are. So it gives me that connection to them, that living steel. That's why I'm playing. But I'm interested to know why you all are still playing, especially if you've been playing since the very beginning. And I know a lot of you have kind of scaled back the way I have as well. You're probably not playing as much. I know a lot of you have stopped playing. You come back 3 months later just to see if the game's still worth playing. I know a lot of you watch my videos to kind of get a cue into that as well to see if it's worth coming back. And then some of you even said you've tried playing, you just can't get back into it. But if you are still playing, despite taking breaks or not, I want to know what's keeping you into this game still. What the selling point is for you, why you're still playing. Let me know in the comments section of this video. If you've been a long-time follower, haven't subbed yet, be sure to do that. Guys, I hope you're doing great out there. I really do. And I don't want to sound like I'm hating on this game right now, because I'm not. I mean, this game has been good to me. I've been good to it. But after 5 years, 6 years, you know, I'm realizing the reasons I'm in it now are not the reasons why I'm in it when I began. And because of that, I feel like I can start to enjoy the game more. Or at least not look at it with the antipathy that a lot of people do. Anyhow, I hope you all are doing wonderful.
Holy shit, this matchmaking junk, by the way. Wow. 2 battleships. Welcome to the future, World Warships. Yeah, I don't really consider it a cost because it's tax deductible. Because it's literally an investment basically into my company, so to say. So it's a 100% tax deductible, so. Dude, how American is this ship? American flag on 2 turrets. I guess this one can just go fuck itself or something. But the other 2, goddamn. It's pretty strong word, yeah. I'm also gonna go finally switch to a dual PC setup. I'm gonna use this current PC that I'm running right now. I got a single PC setup right now. I'm gonna make this into the streaming PC, and then I'm gonna use the new one as a gaming PC. So it should be really, really future-proof at that point. Super heavy AP needs a lot of lead. But I assume it has to improve pin angles. Wouldn't make any sense if it didn't. Oh yeah, it does for sure. Fuck, I closed the distance too much, I can't shoot over. Ugh, data, we need to keep pushing. If you're just using it as a gaming PC, no, I'll use it as editing as well. But I'll be able to do much higher quality streams, much better encoding in all games, not just new games, but also World of Warships in general, because this PC will be fully dedicated to the streaming aspect, so. I'll basically be able to maximize the quality, so. You're going to need some good cooling in your room. Keep the door open. Shouldn't be too difficult.
Torpedoes, direct front.
Interesting. Ognavo, just shoot him once. Why is this so difficult? Use your guns once. Jesus.
Enemy cruiser destroyed. Off to a great start. Enemy severely damaged.
Torpedoes, direct front.
Oh shit, Bayern is here? Okay.
Torpedoes, direct front.
What's my smoke front penalty?
Smoke generator started. Torpedoes, direct front. Torpedoes to starboard.
6.8, okay. Where was this guy? Oh shit, what is that range? It's not very good at all, is it? What is that range? 5 kilometers? What? You should have mean?
Smoke screen set.
This guy's running. Fuck hiding then. 5 km range on that. That is so junk though. Actually pretty depressingly junk. This guy instantly turned away, so
Enemy cruiser sighted.
we just keep pushing them.
Enemy destroyer sighted.
Oh. Interesting. Interesting dispersion. Huh? Double permafires? No way he can outrun me then. I'm gonna keep him lit all game.
Enemy cruiser sighted.
York is cutting me off, that's unfortunate. It really is my team shooting. But I guess this Ognava is just allergic to using his guns. That's unfortunate. He gets away because of that. And my sub dev is diving for no reason. Oh, that's good. If he not only would surface now, thank you.
Torpedoes, dead ahead.
There's his storms. Bayern is aiming at us. Need to keep that in mind.
Smoke generator started.
Once he dies, we'll go dark.
We've destroyed an enemy cruiser. Our team has taken the lead.
There's the Bayern shots. As predicted.
Smoke screen set.
Can't shoot over that. How annoying. Do I have 27mm nose in this thing like Baltic? Oh, I do. Oh, then we don't need to hide. Nothing to hide from them. I'm shooting HE. Too smart. Top grade activated.
The ship is on fire.
I wonder where the sub went though. No pings have activated, so. Double fire. How broken is Bayern? Undetected, so he's run off. Interesting.
Problem solved, sir.
I mean, this thing seems good, absolutely, but Baltimore is just better. Honestly, like it's kind of like Anchorage all over again. I don't think the ship is actually bad in any way. I think the ship is quite nice, but Smoke doesn't fit the American playstyle because you saw how aggressive I played. That's kind of what you want to do in the Americans. You want to, whenever there's an opening, you push in and you smash things. And Radar just fits that playstyle a lot better than the Smoke. It seems like you play it like a Balti without a radar. Yeah, I mean, the Smoke is a disengage tool, which is nice, I guess. But oftentimes, like, I tried to smoke up and farm, he just sailed away. It's like, you don't have that much range, you don't have that much ballistics, you want to fight pretty close range. Which doesn't exactly fit the style that they're trying to build here. I don't think it's a bad ship, because, well, the hull is 27mm hull with super heavy American AP. Like, what is there to dislike? Not a whole lot to dislike, but Baltimore is superior. How exciting. Instead of having one guy we have to hunt down, now there's 3 fucking apes we have to hunt down. Beautiful. Truly, my gaming experience has been enriched for sure. Oh, spotted. Nice. Is he maybe on my forehead though? Oh yeah, he's up here.
Torpedoes, direct front. Torpedoes, direct front.
What is that curving? Holy shit! What? Oh, Mao! Just dodge, by the way. What a fucking junk
Problem
design.
solved, sir.
Holy shit. Just dodge, by the way. Would be ashamed if you got fucked. Permafire? Won't deal too much damage though, but it'll kill him.
Enemy submarine destroyed.
So, how exactly do you dodge those torpedoes? If I went one way and then at the last second I turned the other way and they just curved into me anyway? Like, how do you dodge them without blowing your damage con? You don't. That's literally it. You don't. You just eat shit. You blow damage con or you eat shit. Interesting. I mean, as for Rochester, good ship. Good ship. Not as good as Baltimore, but good ship. Because if you can play Baltimore, why would you play this thing? I don't see it. I mean, Baltimore is 10-second reload versus Rochester's 12. So that's a big DPM increase. Holy shit, that's a big DPM increase. Jesus. Balti has 20% better reload. That's huge. So, and Balti gets radar. So yeah, I don't really see it. Also, Balti gets. Wait, is that rudder ship Balti or prop mod Balti? It's prop mod Balti. And Balti still gets 7.8 second rudder versus this guy's 10.5. Much better rudder then. And radar. I don't know. I don't really see the reason. Baltimore is such a god tier. Tier 8. 27. Pretty identical. Looks like the Citadel is slightly higher, but not as far forward compared to this guy. Actually, this might be same height. I don't see a whole lot of reason to... I mean... Yeah, I don't know. I think the trade-off of smoke for radar isn't very good for this type of ship, so... Especially if you're giving up this much DPM. Just seems like a poor trade. Once again, not a poor ship, but Baltimore is a god tier ship, so, you know.
Hello, good people of YouTube. Mountbatten here, and today we're talking about submarines. So, submarines came up for testing in random battles with the current patch, and I was excited for this because I wanted to see how submarines could perform in a 12v12 game mode with 12 players on both sides, and not like what we've seen before with either in co op or ranked or in their own special game mode, but on the live server in the main battle type with players. So, played a lot of them this week. Played a whole lot on stream last night. It's probably about 60% subs on stream last night. Very good stream. Very interesting games as well in the subs. And I've jotted down my main takeaways from this half a week of playing mostly submarines and Warships. And that's what we're going to be talking about here today. So, getting started from the beginning. First off, it's a lot more complicated than what many claim. A lot more. You have to have the right positioning. You have to be stealthy and try not to get detected at all, because if you do, we'll get into that in a moment. The torpedoes, the homing on battleships is almost laughable in many cases, and the homing on cruisers and destroyers, it's much harder. But of course, on those ships, it's much harder to get the double ping in the first place to get that insane homing. And we'll talk more about that when we talk about cruisers here in a moment. But there's a lot that goes into getting to a good position in a sub to be able to get your torpedoes off. You can't just launch these torpedoes at the bow or the stern of any ship, or even if they're angled, and just be like, all right, I got a double ping on them, I can forget about it. No. First off, you got to maintain that ping, because unless you're right on top of them, there's no way you're going to be able to just let that ping ride and let the torpedoes get to the target without trying to maintain that ping. And that is too if they don't pop their damage con. They pop their damage con, you got to hope there's enough time for the damage con to go down, and then you to be able to ping them again. And when talking about cruisers and destroyers, there generally is, because most cruisers and destroyers have just a few seconds on their damage con, unlike battleships, which, like, we have the American battleships, which have a 20-second damage con, and then the freaking CVs over here with their multiple minute damage con. But you gotta maintain that ping. You gotta also hope that there's no island in the way, because the torpedoes go straight at them. And by straight at them, I mean they don't care what's in the way. Another ship, a friendly ship, a corpse, an island, they don't care. They're gonna run straight into it. So there's all that you gotta take into place. And of course, what depth are you at? Are you shallow enough to get the torps off and them not have to go to the surface? Or are you so deep that they got to have a multiple kilometer run up to where they can get to the surface, to where they can hit the ship, so forth and so on. So it's not as simple, I can promise you, as what you've been reading around Reddit, YouTube, and Facebook, or wherever you get your Warships news from. The ideal situation is to get on the flank to where you have a lot of flat broadside to ping and launch your torpedoes at. If that's the case, then yeah, it's pretty easy to get hits on targets there. But if the target moves at all, or is paying attention at all, and isn't in the middle of a major gunfight fighting multiple ships, most ships can fairly easily dodge these torps. Now, again, if you do get a double ping on a cruiser or destroyer, the homing does go hard. But again, you have to maintain that ping, like I said beforehand, and getting a double ping on a target that's as maneuverable as a DD or a cruiser isn't an easy task. Now, I'm sure there's some Das Boot fans out there that are very good at doing this right now, but the average player, it's a pretty difficult thing to do. Now, am I saying, is it impossible? No. I'm saying it's something that can't normally be done on a regular basis unless someone's got a very predictable movement pattern or such. So, that's the first takeaway. The second takeaway is battleships. Battleships are like almost completely fine unless you are in a terrible position and not moving, or if you're distracted. So on battleships, the torpedoes stop homing at around 2.1 kilometers. Well, not around 2.1 kilometers, exactly at 2.1 kilometers. So if you're paying attention, paying attention to the part of the ship that's highlighted, paying attention to the indicator that's showing you the direction of the ping, you know now what part of the ship those torpedoes are coming from and where those torpedoes are coming from. So point your stern or bow toward that ping indicator and wait. Or if you're feeling really confident, keep sailing and see if they're actually sending torps or if they're just pinging you because they want to ping you. And you can see the torpedoes, they're coming at you, they're 2.1 kilometers away. Turn. It's pretty simple. And if the double ping is still a thing, pop damage con, and now you're going to get like a 4,000 damage torpedo hit. It's not really a big issue for battleships. I tried targeting them a lot in the subs last night, or this night, and my hit rate was probably in like the freaking 20%. Because most of the battleships I ran across were pretty aware of their surroundings and doing a good job of making sure they didn't eat random torps. So, yeah. Now, of course, if you get a battleship that's sitting completely still, isn't paying attention, then yeah, you're going to wreck the guy's face. But if they're moving and maneuvering, paying attention, not in a bad situation where they can't turn in or away from your torps, then yeah, they're going to eat it. But in most cases, they're probably the best class to be in if there's a submarine in the game. Plus, they have the longest range airstrikes out of most of the other classes, so you got that going on too. So, now, if you do get spotted in a submarine, which is probably going to happen unless you just stay 15 kilometers away from the battle the entire time, you are screwed. You are so screwed. You're screwed more in a submarine than you are in a normal ship when you get spotted. Like in a normal ship when you get spotted, there was one instance where I had an island between me and the ships that were hydroing me. But guess what? A lot of these ships had ASW aircraft, like most ships in the game do, so they could still drop their ASW over the island and hit my sub. Plus, too, like when you're being hydroed and sonared, or spotted in general, your dive time gets depleted at 3 times the rate. And oh my god, it doesn't sound that bad, but when you're in battle and you had 5 minutes of dive time, and now Aditi sailed over you for a couple of seconds, and now you have 2 minutes of dive time now, that sucks, because when that runs out and you got to surface, you are dead. Even beneath the surface, you're not safe completely, and is what really perplexes me. That's a lot of people are commenting things like, well, they're invisible and invincible under the water. Like hell they are. Everything has ASW now, and guess what? A whole lot of players don't like submarines, so when one gets spotted, they're all going to dogpile on it, as you should with any target in the game. You know, dogpile on him, focus him down, get him out of the battle, but submarines evaporate under concentrated fire much quicker than any other class in the game because their health is minuscule. And in order to avoid this, they have to go down to their maximum depth. And still there, if you're being focused by a good chunk of the team, I'd say 4 more ships, you're probably still going to lose half of your health. But if you were any shallower, you would be dead. You'd be dead. So, yeah, the second you get spotted, run, crash dive. Don't try and stick it out because you won't be able to. I got lucky a couple times on stream, but I got not so lucky far more times. Now, cruisers. Cruisers are, I think, where there's a lot of balancing issues at right now. So, like I mentioned earlier, the devs really want us to go after cruisers and destroyers and submarines now. And the homing goes hard on cruisers when they get double pinged. Now, the deactivation range for the homing is so much further out on cruisers than it is with destroyers. But cruisers are a very diverse class of ships. We have light cruisers with good rudder shift time. We have heavy cruisers with decent rudder shift time. And then we have large cruisers with not the best rudder shift time. And of course, I'm speaking in general terms. You know, there's the oddball here and there that has, you know, fantastic rudder shift time, even though it's a large cruiser. And there's the odd light cruiser that has a terrible rudder shift time, even though it's a light cruiser. I'm just speaking in general terms. So those ships all share, as far as I can tell, as far as I'm aware in terms of the homing, those ships all share the same degree of homing. To where a cruiser with, let's say, I don't know, a 5-second or a 4-second or a 2-second rudder shift time has to deal with the same level of homing as a cruiser with 10 seconds of rudder shift time. That's a big difference. So when you get that double ping, you get the double homing, but also you get the ability to citadel the ship with your torpedoes if you hit their citadel with the torps. So yeah, it sucks to be a cruiser with poor maneuverability when there's a submarine in game, because now you have to essentially drop what you're doing and try to dodge these very, very, very hard homing, very, very, very hard hitting torpedoes too. So that's where my current issue is at right now. Like I said before, my main issue was damage con being the thing that used to take away the torpedoes homing. After playing submarines, I'm not so sure that's a huge issue. Now, looking at it from Battleship players' perspective, you got two or three ships HE spamming you. You're holding your damage con for that, but now you've been pinged by a submarine. There's potentially torpedoes coming at you that if you don't remove the ping and you can't dodge, you're going to get like 20k in citadel damage, which sucks big time. So you pop the damage con, and the two ships HE spamming you, of course, aren't going to stop HE spamming you because, well, now you've popped your damage con. Now they can get permanent fires on you, and you have to use damage con to negate the torpedo homing, and you still get like 15 or like 10,000 damage in torpedo damage, which equally sucks. But after playing submarines, I stopped going after battleships unless they were the only thing available to me because it was just so annoying to try and get hits on them, especially again the ones that are paying attention. So I started going after cruisers and DDs first, and then that's when my damage started to really, get up there, rather than going after, what most ships go after to get a lot of damage, which is battleships. And ideally, you should be going after cruisers and DDs first because they have a much bigger game impact than battleships. Battleships are great at, providing artillery support, tanking, and potentially blapping a ship here and there, but DDs cap caps, cruisers cap caps, and run DD interference, AA interference. And DDs do a whole lot of this too, of course. They're kind of like the Swiss Army knife of the game currently, except for tanking, unless you're like Khabarovsk. But yeah. So it's what you should be doing anyway. But it's kind of weird. It's going against many years of playing the game and what you usually do when you want to farm damage. But the homing is just so much better against cruisers and DDs. It's kind of hysterical when you see how hard these torpedoes turn sometimes going after DDs and cruisers. So that's where the issue is with me right now, is that the cruisers are really screwed if you get a double sonar ping on you and the torpedoes get launched and you're just not in a maneuverable enough cruiser to dodge it. And then too, now you're having to turn hard in a cruiser that can easily be blapped by other ships. So that kind of sucks. But the thing is too, even with this being the first week they're available for testing and it would probably be their most popular week, I never ran into a 4 sub-a-side game. It was all 2 subs per side. And I think that really is as much as should be in a random battle. 2 per side. I think that should be the maximum. Any more than that, and it's going to be far too much on the field in terms of pings and having to dodge these torpedoes left, right, and center. At that point, there's 4 on the match at a time. That's just too much in my opinion. But 2 per side, I think, is ideal. 1 per side, I mean, really, you don't even notice that they're there. 2 per side, you may run across one if you're not on the flank that they spawned on, But in terms of battle impact, they don't seem to have much more of an impact than your average DD. The most damage I had during the night was 81,000 damage. And that's from going after cruisers and DDs. And a lot of times, you have to go after ships that are distracted in engagement, because if you go after a cruiser that's by himself and knows that you're there, you're going to have a very fun time trying to hit him. So you're going after the ones that are already engaged with other ships or distracted, and they're losing health, and you might finish them off. And sure, you get double ping on them. Like I double pinged a Des Moines that had 20k health left, and by the time my torpedoes there, he only had 10k health left. So yeah, sure, I quadruple citadeled him for 10k damage, but yeah, I finished him off for sure. Now I did have quite a few 3 and 4 kill games. But a fair amount of this was fighting the other submarines, which is freaking fun. I really do love that. That's a very fun aspect of subs. But yeah, in terms of damage, they're really not bringing in a lot of damage. They're really not, going out there and chunking a battleship for 40,000 damage every game. And again, sure, you can do that every now and then when you run across someone that's distracted. The main thing is cruisers are where most of the balancing issues are cropping up now, in my mind at least, and from what I've experienced at least. The class itself, the cruiser class itself, is far too diverse of a class to have one homing status for all of it. And I think it cuts off at like 340 meters with the double ping, which on the game scale is nothing. So you have to work with that homing status and those homing parameters for the Smolensk all the way up to the Stalingrad. As far as I know, and I went back and I checked the dev blogs, it doesn't appear that they gave a separate homing status to the supercruisers. So from the smallest cruiser up to the largest cruiser in the game, They all have the same homing status, and that isn't going to work out well, in my mind at least. So they need to go in and either by base rudder shift time or by classification of light, medium, heavy, and then super or large cruiser, they need to give those individual subsets of cruisers a different homing mechanic or status or a cutoff range or whatever you want to call it. They need to tweak the homing for the individual subgroups of cruisers in the game. That's the main thing right now for me. Again, battleships, the worry about overloading the battleship's damage con isn't really an issue in my mind, because most submarine players are going to realize, hey, I can sit here for 10 minutes and ping this battleship all day, but it's a lot easier to go after that cruiser over there than this battleship, just because the homing is so much better on that ship. Now, the cruiser damage con, I think we're going to wind up being in the same boat as we were at the BB's damage con to now, where it's kind of overloaded. I still think maybe it should be on a different consumable like degaussing or something like that. Earlier I was speaking mostly about the battleships damage con, if you weren't aware of that, or I might have been rambling a little bit too much, but that's what I meant. Like, battleship terms, damage con I think is fine, but maybe a different consumable like degaussing with a set number of charges per game, like maybe starting with 4 base, 5 with superintendent. Who knows? It could be unlimited, it could be limited. I'm just spitballing here. Anyway, guys, that's my first impressions on these submarines being in random battles. Let me know what you guys think about it in the comments down below. I would encourage you guys to play the submarines for yourself if you can get your hands on them in the rental period. Try them out for yourselves, get in the battle with them, play a few games in them, get to see how the mechanics work before you jump on one bandwagon one way or the other. Just remember that people can cherry pick clips, you know. I'm sure there's probably a few crazy clips on the subreddit, on YouTube, on the forums, or whatever going around right now. But just know that, honestly, it's not like that most of the time with any class in the game, let alone just subs. Just keep that in mind, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel.
Hello everyone. It is once again that time for another submarine test. This time we finally get to experience some new things, namely tier 10 submarines, the Balau and the U-2501 from the German side. And we actually have access to some captain perks, which are very much works in progress, as well as the consumables specifically for submarines, which are also very much works in progress. As you can see on TNY, I have basically new. They don't even have an icon yet. The gameplay basis is quite the same. You can launch torps before or after you ping. There are some perks that enhance it. I'll get into that a bit later. But the fundamental concept is still there. You launch torpedoes, you ping the target. The first ping makes your torpedo torpedoes home very aggressively this time. Like, I'm talking insanely aggressive homing to the extent that I've been able to nail DDs, dodging cruisers and so forth. And the second ping gives you citadel damage. It enhances your damage. So getting a second ping means that, well, 5 torpedoes is enough to just devastate this Des Moines, with 5 citadels each. But landing those double pings is somewhat more difficult, or quite a bit more difficult than it used to be. There's the incentive for diving is that on the surface your ping velocity is roughly 500 meters per second, which, if you consider something like a North Carolina, which has infamously slow shells, travels at 700 meters per second. So it does go in a straight line, of course, but it's about 500 meters per second on surface, whereas underwater your ping travels at roughly 900 to 1,000, depending on the nation. I think the Americans had 1,000 meters per second. So basically your ping is twice as fast, and of course having a significantly faster ping makes it much easier to land those double pings that you need to enhance your damage. Now, there is some counterplay available to the pings in the sense that, well, you'll see it against this Vermont. I ping him once, I get the homing on the torpedoes, and then I want to ping him a second time to get that extra damage on him. The target does know he's being pinged, the section lights up, and he does know when he's being double pinged as well. And what this Vermont does is he waits until he spots the torpedoes that are coming straight for him, and when that happens he's actually going to damage con, and you'll see that the ping disappears and it says torpedoes have lost their target. Your torpedoes lost their target, and that means he just damage conned, and instead of the citadel and the hard hits, well, suddenly the damage from 4 torpedoes is about 14,000 damage. So significant downgrade there. I mentioned that there are some perks that you can do. I'm using a perk, for example, that makes the first ping last a shorter time, but if minus 10%, but if you get 2 pings, it lasts longer. So if you manage to nail the double ping on the target, then you get plus 20% duration. In fact, many of these new submarine perks are very much aggressive trade-offs. There are some problems here though, namely using your damage con, especially on something like a battleship that has an incredibly long damage con. Well, I just wait out the 20 seconds. Actually, I don't even need to be waiting, because pings are basically infinitely spammable. They don't affect your magical fairy dust, your mana, whatever you want to call it. So once he's used his damage con, I just keep pinging and I keep torping, and there's not really a whole lot he can do about it. So from a battleship perspective, the counterplay is extremely limited, especially if you can't really disengage from the submarine, because the submarines are quite fast. You can see I'm underwater, I'm doing what, 22 knots. For something like a Vermont, I'm basically matching his speed, but I'm undetected. There we go, going for the double ping once again. There is another perk that I'm also running that I should mention. It's really poorly formulated, but the concept is that if you launch your torpedoes before you ping, you get a 15% torpedo damage boost. That is if you get I think a double ping as well. I'm not sure. They kind of used Google Translate on Russian perk names, so a lot of them are really muddy and quite hard to understand, but the concept seems to be that if you launch your torps first, then ping, this 4-point perk does give you bonus damage, and you can see, of course, the difference in damage. Those 2 torps did as much as the 4 torps earlier on the other Vermont. My problem really here is that once a battleship kind of gets caught in this cycle of being chased by a submarine that's constantly pinging them, there's not a whole lot you can do. Turning away doesn't really help, and the other issue is that these torpedoes have a really high chance of breaking modules. In fact, I keep breaking battleships' engines, which is something I find really silly. But if you have a ping on a target, you saw I broke the engine on that other Vermont. If you have a ping on a target and your torpedoes are going in, you're basically either guaranteed a flood or something broken, and since you're constantly spamming pings, constantly spamming torps, well, there's a flood, for example, his damage con can in no way keep up. So he keeps slowing down, he keeps hitting more hits, and he keeps becoming more vulnerable. It's easier to land the double pings, your damage keeps going up. It's a really vicious cycle, and the battleship can't really do much about it. If you land a double ping, you can basically ping him anywhere on the ship after that. It'll still keep your double ping active, but it won't refresh it. Another citadel on him. The ping runs out, but once again, I already have the next ping going, and you saw that I broke his engine. At this point, the game ended. This is especially bad for any sort of battleships that rely on hydro, like, for example, hello, Mr. Kurfürst. You'll note the ping is significantly slower because I'm on the surface now, but that's because I didn't want to dive here because there's submarines and all sorts of stuff around. But the point is, this Kurfürst, well, he's gotten pinged. I think he damaged con the ping earlier. Or even if he didn't, it doesn't matter. The tracking is so aggressive, even if he's running Hydra and he sees the torps coming, he can in no way dodge the level of homing torpedoes coming his way. I launch 6 from the nose, that was a double ping, and then I launch another 4 from the stern. This is the advantage of the Balau, being able to launch from both sides, and it's just a constant cycle of homing torpedoes closing the distance with him, and his Hydra doesn't really help him a whole lot and doesn't really defend him against the non-stop barrage of torpedoes that is coming his way. At this point, I don't really even need to dive. I'm just spamming them at me. He's got a broken engine and he's flooding, and he's basically hating life. And there's constant more torpedoes coming his way, and he's constantly being pinged. He got damage gone up. Your torpedoes lost their target, but it looks. Oh, was that on someone else? I'm not sure. Or maybe I think it just ran out. But I already had a ping on the way, and he's already re-pinged, and there's already more torpedoes coming his way. And of course, when he's got a broken engine, he also becomes a really easy target for anyone else. That doesn't mean that these things are some sort of super destroyers, though. This is a pretty good example of trying to kill a CV. I've gone all the way through into the enemy spawn to spot him, and I launch my ping on him, and his 1 minute immunity kicks in. And at this point, you can see next to me is a Daring, a DD that has both torpedoes and guns, and he's just nailing him with non-stop damage output, and I'm not doing any damage. At this point, I'm going for the white line torpedoes. I've sped it up, of course, but he's still immune to my pings, and my torpedoes are still traveling. So many times, the submarine is just fundamentally completely useless when it comes to supporting your team in any way whatsoever. You can't help DDs fight other DDs. You kind of suck at helping anyone subs fight other subs. You just really suck at supporting in any way. And on the other hand, for DDs, running into a submarine is basically a free kill. It's a drive-by. It doesn't take any actual skill or any mechanics. Like in this case, I'm in my Clavera, I'm hunting a Shima, a sub pops up. I take a slight detour over this submarine, and I press G, the depth charge button, and the depth charges. I don't need to do anything else except basically sail near him, press the button, and I one-shot him from 100 health to 0 in just a few seconds. His counterplay, he's just a roadkill for real destroyers. So submarines are often quite pitiful. Speaking of anti-submarine warfare, we were hoping that they would give the Holland, because it has these forward-launching special depth charges that are supposed to activate upon hitting a target. We were hoping they would do something special, but the level of laziness that we see here is kind of incredible. Instead of the depth charges flying sideways, they took the same animation and they put it on the bow of the ship. So you're basically launching depth charges that explode underneath your own ship, which would of course break the keel and sink the Holland. So basically as lazy as you can get on the implementation when it comes to Holland's special ASW. That doesn't mean that submarines are always boring, even though it is a lot of pinging and stuff. Sometimes it can get hectic, like in this case, I'm trying to torpedo Goliath, and suddenly I get spotted by a submarine behind me, and there's a Z-52 closing the distance from the right. I get sonar locked on, you can see the indication from where I'm being sonar pinged, and at this point I'm waiting to see the torpedo indicator, and I'm basically going to the surface as quickly as I can. I damage con the sonar lock-on, so I don't eat all the torpedoes, and I try to go above them. I end up eating one, but I dodge most of them. I surface, use the back torpedoes on the Z-52, who's closing the distance a bit too aggressively and doesn't respect the torpedoes. I kill him off, and then I dive around this U-2501 who was trying to sink me. And I actually managed to disengage from here, because they don't really have a whole lot of tools that can chase me. In fact, heavy cruisers don't really seem to have any tools whatsoever against submarines, so their counterplay is incredibly limited as well. As long as you have mana, fairy dust, they don't really seem to be able to do a whole lot, and I'm able to disengage from this situation. So there are moments, like this moment, I'm watching a Republic, I think, that's sinking over here. And in fact, I go into cinematic view to watch, like, wow, that's actually really cool, being underwater and seeing him sink to the bottom of the ocean. And then, right as I'm being a bit hyped and impressed, it just fades away and disappears. Because Wargaming didn't really bother to
put any more effort into it than that. So the ships that are sinking underneath, they kind of just fade away into nothingness, which really, I mean, it does kind of kill the immersion. And there are some good things like the hydrophone that I'm pinging. All subs have one. It's a default consumable. It spots nearby enemies every 15 seconds. It's active for 30 seconds, so you normally get 3 pings. In this case, I'm pinging a Hakuryu, and he's actually low enough HP, so I don't need to bother with any of my homing sonar pings. I'm just gonna surface and drop a full set of torpedoes on him, because he's basically caught with his pants down right next to my submarine. And before he really has time to react, I got 6 torpedoes on the way. No lock-on or anything, but I don't need it because the alpha is enough to sink the Hakuryu, and I'm able to disengage from the Halland, or the Halland doesn't even bother to chase me at this point. There are these moments where you go like, wow, this is kind of cool, like surfacing next to a carrier that you just sank with your torpedoes. Like, the concept is cool, but then there's all these mechanical issues, like the fact that they're immune to your pings, and things like this happen extremely rarely, and normally killing the CV is just significantly easier with a destroyer or basically any other ship, because ultimately subs just end up feeling like poor destroyers. I mean, it doesn't mean that you can't occasionally catch DDs off guard. You are able to launch torpedoes straight forward, which can be an advantage if you manage to jump them in small narrow channels like this Halland here. Obviously he can gun me down, which I can't do to him, but I'm closing the distance so quickly, and I go to periscope depth to make it a bit harder for him to actually land his shells, and I just start dropping torpedo sets. He jukes the first 2 with a hard turn to the left, but I keep 1 more set for that hard turn. And as he goes for it and starts dropping depth charges, he ends up eating one of the torpedoes and ends up being sunk. Of course, if he had been full HP like I was, then my chances wouldn't have been very high, because then he could have just basically sailed past me and dropped depth charges, and that would have been the end of me. As for sub versus sub gameplay, I'd say it's a bit improved. The magical fairy dust maybe helps a bit, that if it's 2 potatoes fighting each other, they will eventually be forced to surface, but I still don't think it's a correct way of implementing it. I still think it should be a rechargeable thing. It shouldn't recharge underwater. You'd be forced to surface, like, let's say every 2 minutes or something, or 1 minute 30. I mean, they can play with the numbers, but the idea is that instead of having the set value, it's something that you could play around. You surface, you recharge it, your detection goes up, and then you go underneath and so forth. This is a U2501, and I played both the U2501 and the Balau, and the Balau is just hilariously much better than that, but than the German sub. The German sub doesn't have any back torps. I launched them a bit too early there. They don't have time to activate, otherwise I would have killed him right there. But the U2501 doesn't have any back torps. It only has 6 forward torps, whereas the Balau has 6 forward and 4 back torpedoes. Also, the Balau handles significantly better. It has 14.2 km range on the torps. The U2501 has something like 10.9. There's a whole host of... It has more health than the U2501. Honestly, there's a whole set of issues. I'm not sure why, but I tried playing them both, and I've had some pretty good games in the Balau, pretty decent games, whereas most of my games in the U2501 have only been trash. And you can really outplay it pretty easily, like in this case I juke past him, and then I drop my back torps on him, landing 2, and at this point he's already running out of battery, so I know he's about to surface, so I use this really tight turning circle, which is once again significantly better. I set a ping on him so I know where he's going to surface, and then I just turn my ship around, and I'm gonna preemptively drop torpedoes where he's about to surface, because with no battery he doesn't have any choice. I'm not sure if letting people know, I don't know why I know his battery level. I think that's also a poor choice. I don't think the opponent should be allowed to know the enemy's battery level. It's like knowing if someone has torpedoes loaded, or knowing if someone has their main guns loaded. You shouldn't know if your enemy has their battery, what the battery level of the enemy is. That's just silly. Like, how on earth are you supposed to know that? Just another stupid mechanic. Fundamentally, though, this big same issues still remain, and that is For battleships, they basically can't do shit. They're just free targets. And another issue, the biggest issue really, is the emptiness on the server. It's still gigantic, because you got to remember that with, like in this game, with 3 people playing subs, and if you look at the top, 3 people are playing subs, 4 people are playing destroyers, and 1 guy is playing a carrier. We actually have 4 surface ships, 3 battleships and 1 cruiser. That's all the surface ships. So all the subs and all the DDs and the CV, they're all hunting these few surface ships, because those are the only targets that they can really consistently deal damage to. And Wargaming still hasn't addressed this, and they still haven't fixed it. And this is, in my opinion, the single most glaring issue, is that these big tier 10 maps, they feel so stupidly empty when there's literally 4 surface combatants, and everyone else is these stealthy hidden ships that generally don't take much part in the rest of the combat. And until Wargaming finds a way to solve that, I honestly don't see how they could possibly ever implement the subs, even in their current extremely questionable version, how they could possibly ever manage to implement them. They need to bump up the player limit to at least 15, but then I think the server can't even handle it, so I honestly don't know where they're supposed to go from here. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed my take on the subs, and as always, if you do...